Vaccinations, part A of part 1 of 2. That's the big controversial topics. But I want to go back to this. I want to address this from the questions that most people fail to ask. There's a really important reason here. You guys have heard all the other stuff. You've heard all the other arguments. And I want to point this out to you. There's a reason why you've heard it. Okay? This is the reason right here. The wrong questions. Does mercury cause autism? Right? That's a big question. Everybody wants to know, does mercury cause autism? And it's great for the pharmaceutical companies when they can stand up at the end of the day and claim, mercury does not cause autism. See? Go ahead and get your vaccinations. Right? They want you asking that question. Are vaccines safe? They want you asking that question because all I have to do is show you it's safe. Right? Can we make clean vaccines? Absolutely. When people get ticked off enough, we'll start making them clean. But go get your vaccinations. Right? These are the wrong questions. Why? Have you thought about this? Why is she the national spokesman for the anti-vaccine movement? Do you guys know who this is? This is Jenny McCarthy. Do you know what she used to do?
Singled out on TV.
Before that, she was a Playboy playmate. She was a playmate, and she's now the chosen one for the face of the anti-vaccine movement.
Who chose her?
Who chose her? Have you thought about that? Why does the media give her so much attention? Ooh, we got the perfect one for it. Plan it on her. Let's blow her up. And everybody will associate ex-playmate of the year doing Rock a New Year's Eve with the anti-vaccine movement. Where's the credibility? You see what I'm saying? Where's the credibility? That's the point that we have not considered. When you look at the people that they're playing out, when somebody legitimate stands up, what do? They demonize them and they take out their license. They take away their medical license. They charge them with research fraud, even though it's the same manipulation of data that the drug companies do every stinking day. I'm talking about a particular there, if you guys have followed this at all. So these are the wrong questions, though, and I want you to see that these are purposeful why they're going in this direction. They want you to be distracted from the real questions. Here's the real questions. Well, I want to cover this first, just for the record. If vaccines don't cause autism, vaccines, notice I said vaccines, not mercury. If vaccines don't cause autism, then why can we reproduce the same effects in monkeys? Okay? In this study, infant macaque monkeys receiving the recommended pediatric vaccine regimen from the 1990s, not today, the 1990s, displayed a different pattern of maturational changes in amygdala volume and differences in amygdala binding of blah 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 following the DTaP MR vaccination between T1 and T2 compared with non-exposed animals. They also showed greater total brain changes, etc., which is what you see in autism. You see the same thing when they give monkeys the vaccine schedule. So that's one of them, and then this one's even a bigger bombshell. MIT. You guys are familiar with MIT, like one of the most prestigious universities in our nation. They confirmed in 2012 that aluminum and Tylenol mix is actually implicated in autism. They actually showed, and they've replicated the exact pathway of how this happens. Why haven't you guys seen this in the media? Think about it. Why have you not seen the study? They actually showed that the kids would get the MMR vaccine, which is loaded with aluminum, and then because that particular vaccine has a lot of side effects, the fever, high fever, and all that stuff, that's the one where you call the doctor and say, he's having responses. And the doctor says, oh, well, they're just having a fever, give them Tylenol. And it's the combination of the vaccines and the Tylenol that actually are causing the changes in the brain because they play off of each other. Now, does that mean vaccines are safe? Well, I mean, just don't give your kid Tylenol, right? You're fine. Your kid won't get autism. It's still answering the wrong question. So, while the autism community has focused on the mercury in thimerosal, which is exactly what they want you to think about, as the main culprit in vaccines, our studies with the VAERS database, that's a National Vaccine Reaction Database. Okay? We actually have, yes, the government has, did you guys know this? The government has a database where they track all the vaccine injuries that happen in the United States. There's that many of them. They not only have that, but they actually have a tax on every vaccine that's sold that goes into a fund that they then use to pay out to families who are injured by vaccines. We call that an insurance policy. Right? This is actually happening. So they looked at this database, have identified aluminum and acetaminophen as being likely even more damaging than mercury. Aluminum binds strongly to sulfur-containing molecules, and the body depends on sulfur for the proper elimination of both aluminum and acetaminophen, as well as mercury. Because of the sulfur deficiencies, aluminum, mercury, and acetaminophen likely accumulate in the autistic brain, leading to further damage. I mean, this is huge. This is mega stuff, but you're not going to hear about it. Okay? The world will not be destroyed by those who do evil, but by those who watch them without doing anything. God help you guys if you guys don't share this information. That's all I'm going to say about that. So here's the real questions. Were vaccines a primary cause of decline in disease? That should be the real question. Number 2, are these diseases deadly in the 21st century developed nations? That's a good question. Number 3, can these diseases be easily treated medically or naturally? That's a great question, right? Can we treat them? Number 4, are mass vaccination programs therefore even necessary? That's definitely the question they never want you asking. Because we're talking loaded by billions of dollars that would change. So number 1, did they cause declines? Polio was eradicated by vaccination, right? You guys have all heard it. It was eradicated by vaccinations. Okay? Well, in this study by Neil Miller, this was in 2004, the polio vaccine, a critical assessment of its arcane history, efficacy, and long-term health-related consequences. This shows you a graph of the United States and Britain of polio, the polio death rate by decreasing its own before the vaccine was introduced. So what you see here is, starting in 1920, this huge slide in polio cases. And then this is where the vaccines actually came on the market. Yet everybody will tell you that the vaccines cause a decline. Looking at that graph, can you tell me that the vaccines cause a decline? Obviously not, because the vaccines didn't exist back here. So you've got to look at this. Well, hang on, there's even a bigger one. Have you guys watched the news in the last week? What are they talking about? Polio is popping up. Guess what? It wasn't eradicated. Go figure, right? So the claims are dead. I mean, in fact, the people that are getting polio are the ones that are getting the polio vaccine. It's that simple. So this is just, this was the New York Times from May 5th, which was, what, 2 weeks ago? I pulled that and popped that on there. So the question is, did it really get eradicated by vaccines? Obviously not. So that, we can't use that point anymore. This one, when was the last time that you saw measles? Besides in the new research where they're actually using measles to inject people for cancer therapy. Now, they're actually doing that. Right now, it's top page in Google is on the health news. They're using measles to cure cancer. Okay, this shows you measles in Canada. The reported incidence from 1935 to 1983. This is the slide, and there's where the vaccine was introduced. Look at what happened to that. That's odd, isn't it? It's on this huge downslide. You introduce a vaccine and all of a sudden it flattens out and it plateaus. That's strange. This one is the same thing in England and Wales. Looking at the measles mortality cases, children under the age of 15. And there's this huge slide, and then there's 1950, there's 1965. That's when the vaccine was introduced. But it caused a decline, right? The interesting thing is, I went over to the CDC website, Center for Disease Control, and I pulled their data. This is the graph that they showed. Oh, look at that. Measles, United States, 1950 to 2001. Look at that. This big old jump, and then vaccine license. Oh, boom. Look at that. Vaccine works. Nobody can question it. 1950, oh, isn't that just remarkable? You guys see that? They choose the data that they present you because they don't want you to see what happened before 1950. Isn't that convenient? Should be disgusting, right? Measles outbreak in highly vaccinated population. This was from the New England Journal. You know, the question is not even about, did the vaccine, or, you know, did the vaccine, where was I going with that? I'll watch you, hit the camera. Forget about it. Anyways, you see, the point being there that the vaccination, who cares about the 1% unvaccinated? You can look at that and say, well, see, the reason why is because everybody was vaccinated, so of course only 1% of them are going to get sick. Hello, the big picture is 99% of them had and they still got sick. How well does your vaccine work? Right? That's the big issue here. Okay, next one here. Did they cause declines? Pertussis. You guys heard about this one this last year. Pertussis was all over the place. It remains on high alert status with vaccination propaganda. This is the USA. Mean annual pertussis mortality rates. That means people that die, for the record, if you guys did not know that. You see this huge drop and then pertussis vaccine introduced. Oh, yay. This one here, England and Wales. Look at that. Big drop off. Vaccine pertussis vaccination begins and it flattens out. So this one here, this is from an outbreak in 1993. Relatively recent. This was from the Vaccine Safety Manual. And in this case, 90% of those who got sick were vaccinated. Only 10% were unvaccinated. So 90% of people got sick despite the vaccination. Doesn't work. Okay? The idea that it gives you permanent immunity, it's, obviously there's something wrong with that idea. But see, even that is the wrong question because that implies you got the vaccination. I want to say, did we need the vaccine? I mean, all these people, oh my gosh, they saw the declines and they didn't even know what the vaccination was. It didn't exist. And it was dropping off on its own. So we got to be thinking, what are the other factors behind that cause declines? Okay? What happened to disease with similar declines and no vaccination? What happens with diseases that are also infectious diseases that we never came up with a vaccination for? This one was scarlet fever. Look at the decline. No vaccination for scarlet fever ever adopted in the United States to this day. Yet it declined. It went away on its own. On the same time frame, the same timeline as all the other infectious diseases did. It's the same stuff. We see the same patterns. We see the same years. It's the same stuff because that's not what it was about. It was about sanitation. It was about diets. It was about all the other factors, the bigger issues. This one is interesting. This looks at England, scurvy and pertussis. What is scurvy? Vitamin C deficiency, severe vitamin C deficiency. And they saw as scurvy cases declined, pertussis declined right with it. This one here looked at scurvy and measles. As scurvy declined, measles declined. I wonder, there might be a correlation between nutrition and infectious disease, antioxidant levels and infectious disease. See how that works? Okay, so we got to think about this. Did they really cause the declines? I'd have to say no. Next one, are they deadly? Okay, this is the actual disease and death rates today in developed nations, reported cases according to the World Health Organization. You guys are starting to see why this took me forever to put this stuff. You cannot find this information. You'd think this data would be easy to find. Watch this. Okay, these are the actual cases of the different things for the United States, United Kingdom, and Canada. Okay? We had 55 cases of measles in a whole year in the entire United States. We had 229 cases of mumps, 9 cases of rubella, 47,693 cases of pertussis, 0 cases of polio. Need that vaccine, right? 37 cases of tetanus. Step on a nail, you better go get a shot, right? 2 cases of HIV. I could only find data in 2011. Wasn't even available for 2012. All these other ones are for 2012. 2013, they haven't even released the data for yet, right? It's too recent. So now, what you're looking at, this is the populations of the different areas. 313 million people in the United States. Okay? These, every time that you see a question mark, that's because you cannot find any reference to somebody actually dying. They do not list it. The only time that they actually list deaths is when it's convenient, when they can show you that people died. Otherwise, it's not listed. We have to assume that, especially out of this, like 9, we have to assume that none of those died. You know? But in all these other ones, even with 550 cases or 3,000 cases, there's no reference. They do not tell you that anybody died, which you have to assume nobody died. Okay? So this is really important because I want to look at this number right here. 47,000, because that's a big one, right? That's where everybody was getting sick. I mean, pertussis, you got to get that shot, right? Let's look at that a little closer. Of the worst disease above pertussis, collective risk of infection is currently 0.00016%. That's your actual risk out of 313 million to 47,000 people. That's your risk, 0.00016%. Your death rate, if you are infected, so you're already just this small, but your actual risk of death if you get the infection is 0.00056%. Does that sound deadly to you? No? You're taking a much bigger risk getting in your car when you leave here. So the total risk to your healthy child, who they're telling you that you need to get them vaccinated, your actual risk of death, which is why patients get vaccinated, right? Because they're scared into it. Your child will die. They will be maimed. They will this. They will that. They scare you into it. Yet their real risk of death is 0.000000088%. Does that not tick you off? I mean, come on. This is ridiculous. Now, there's something else to this too. They would say that that's all because of vaccination. That the reason why, we don't see as many deaths is because of the vaccinations. But we just went through that. We just went through the slides. You can look at all this information. You can see the slides were happening without the vaccinations. So how can you use that as a reason why? You know what? I've got an idea. Let's see what happens if we just cut the vaccinations for a while. Then let's see what happens. And you know what? That has happened in history before. And there was a decrease in disease rates. So according to the Center for Disease Control, VAERS database, there were 25,894 adverse reactions to vaccinations reported in that same year. So, yes, we had the cases. Yes, less than 50 kids died total? Yet there were 25,000 adverse reactions listed. That's just what's reported. And how many kids are being diagnosed with autism now? It's 1 out of 34 boys or something like that? I mean, it's a very, very high number. We've got to rethink this. Of the reported incidents now, let's think about this even deeper. Of the reported incidents, there are many unanswered questions such as, what were the conditions in which the patient was immune compromised? What were the conditions in which they were infected? How were they medically treated? These things are not considered when we see 20 people died from pertussis. We don't know what the situation was. You see that? Okay. Considering what this data suggests, does the risk of vaccination, both known and unknown, now justify the perceived or factual reduction of risk of said disease? It's hard to argue, isn't it? It's really hard to argue that would actually satisfy the need to do it. Does that risk to benefit justify the current level of government and special interest involvement and even mandate a vaccination policy? Do any of you guys live in Mississippi? No? That's good. Thank God. Yeah, because I just had a family move to Alabama for the sole reason of not vaccinating their children. Because if you're in Mississippi, you don't have a choice. Your kid cannot go to school because they cannot get anything but a medical exemption, which has to be signed by a medical doctor. They changed that. I used to write them. I used to write vaccination exemptions, medical exemptions, and then they changed the writing to say only a medical doctor can sign it because they saw they were coming from others. So, the risk doesn't justify the level of government involvement. What does justify the level of government involvement? The money that's coming in because of it. We are sold that herd immunity, which by the way has never been proven in humans. In fact, why has it never been proven? Because we've never reached the levels of herd immunity. So you can't say that it causes it when we've never actually reached the levels to justify that claim. How far does it go when people use claims that don't exist for other conditions? They're all over it. They're like, oh, you can't say that. You don't have the, cherries prevent heart disease. You can't say that. We're going to put cherry growers out of business. Yet they do the same thing. They say that herd immunity is a big deal. Justification, we are sold that this is justification to forgive your rights. However, it is no more your right to worry about what choice others ultimately make as it is for them to make the decision for your child. So I put that in there to say this. Yes, it is your choice. If you choose to vaccinate your kid, I can't tell you not to. At this point in time, I cannot tell you not to. But I also sure as hell don't want somebody telling me what I'm going to do with my kids. Make sense? There's a point where, now it is going to be between you and your kids. I mean, it is between you and your kids with what you do to them because they can't make the decision for themselves. So, the same thing would go if you choose not to put your kids through school. I'm not going to educate my kids at all. You've got to be, your kids might be pissed at you, right? Yeah, we do have a responsibility to our kids to make sure that they are protected at all costs. Can they be treated naturally or medically? Okay, measles. Medical intervention, home care alone. That's all they recommend, home care alone. It self-resolves. Okay, what else self-resolves? Mumps, rest in home care alone. Rubella, rest in home care alone. Pertussis, 3 common antibiotics, each with potentially fatal side effects, but we can treat with antibiotics, simple antibiotics. Polio, bed rest, pain relievers, portable ventilators, modern exercise. Man, I thought we all got put in giant iron lungs and couldn't move and all this stuff. No, this is what they recommend because most cases self-resolve. They don't turn into anything. Tetanus, immune globulin or equine antitoxin injection for tetanus. Do you know tetanus is the only one that it's not really a vaccination. It's actually a toxin. And so it makes sense to get a tetanus shot if you've been confirmed that you are toxic with tetanus toxin, right? So not just because you stepped on a nail, but because you actually were diagnosed, you can then be given the tetanus antitoxin and you'll get well. Relatively easy. Meningitis, intravenous 3rd generation cephalosporin, another just antibiotic. So all these things are medically treatable. That's why you don't see people dying from them. Make sense? Now, how could you do these naturally? I'm not going to go through all that for the sake of time, but I gave you guys what to do in the case of getting these different infections. The point being is, do you really have to be scared into vaccination? I would have to say no. Are they necessary? Should infectious disease still be a high priority agenda for public health in the 21st century economically developed nations? Pacific Islanders, this is infant mortality in the 20th century, dramatic but uneven progress. This was a study done in 2001. Pacific Islanders, the most, cause of infant mortality are drastically different from those prevalent early in the century, which were closely connected with living conditions and the environment. The current leading causes are more amenable to medical technology. In other words, It was the living conditions that caused all the sickness. And now we're not dying from the living conditions. We're dying from the medical conditions used to treat the situation that no longer exists. Tell me that's not insane. Flu vaccines used to be contraindicated in pregnancy. They used to tell you, do not give flu vaccines in pregnancy. Then they changed their mind. There's good money to be made there, right? I mean, if you can get all the pregnant moms to take flu shots or 2, that's good money. Thus, the concomitant administration of the seasonal influenza and pandemic A1H1 vaccines during 2009-2010 suggests a synergistic toxicity and a statistically significant higher rate of fetal loss reporting relative to the single-dose vaccine seasons. So we had an interesting scenario happen when they started giving the H1N1 vaccine. When they just did the flu shots, the fetal deaths were only so high. But in the season where they got the flu season, the regular flu, and the H1N1 vaccine, we had a massive explosion of fetal deaths. And so they were able to show in this study that there was a correlation between flu vaccines and infant death. Not going to hear about it. Are they necessary? Big assertions should be fully investigated, don't you think? This is a study out of the UK, the vaccination policy and the code of practice of the Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunization. Are they at odds? This was from Neural Dynamics Research Group. Okay, University of British Columbia, by the way. Well, Canada. All these studies, they get confusing. Instead of reacting appropriately by re-examining existing vaccination policies when safety concerns over specific vaccines were identified by their own investigations, the JCVI either A, took no action, B, skewed or selectively removed unfavorable safety data from public reports, and C, made intensive efforts to reassure both the public and the authorities in the safety of respective vaccinations. 2, significantly restricted contraindication to vaccination criteria in order to increase vaccination rates despite outstanding and unresolved safety issues. 3, on multiple occasions requested from vaccine manufacturers to make specific amendments to their data sheets when these were in conflict with the JCVI's official advices on immunizations. 4, persistently relied on methodologically dubious studies while dismissing independent research to promote vaccine policies. 5, persistently and categorically downplayed safety concerns while overinflating vaccine benefits. Do you not see that every year, right? Look at all the pertussis billboards this last year. Made me sick. 6, promoted and elaborated a plan for introducing new vaccines of questionable efficacy and safety into the routine pediatric schedule on the assumption that the licenses would eventually be granted. 7, actively discouraged research on vaccine safety issues. 8, deliberately took advantage of parents' trust and lack of relevant knowledge to vaccinations in order to promote a scientifically unsupported immunization program which could put certain children at risk of severe long-term neurological damage. Do all of those apply in the United States? Heck yes. This is the same thing that's going on all over the world. So, what is this? This is your right to not vaccinate your children letter. So, real simply, this will be in the notes. You can take it, you can copy it, you can change it how you want to, but it is your right to religious exemption in the state of Alabama. It's not in Mississippi, but you can do this in Alabama. Bring this letter to your local health department and basically just says that you understand, you understand blah, 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 all their stuff, but here's my rights. Here's the constitutional code, the Alabama code, within our rights, and we are exercising that. Give me my letter. It's that simple, and nobody has any problems. I had that Mississippi parent that just moved over here. She was terrified going to the health department because she was sure that they were going to heckle her and give her problems. And I'm literally texting her when she's outside the doors. She's like panicking, like breathing heavy and everything. And she went in and they just handed it to her. She was like, oh my gosh, that was easy.